All right, what's going on, everybody? It is another episode of Recovery Revolution Live. So glad that you could join us, and I'm excited about tonight's guest. I'm thinking I'm going to let JR introduce her tonight because they met at the I just went blank on the name of the recovery thing that was in Vegas. Why did I blank on it? JR will correct me whenever he gets on. But anyway, guys, excited to have you on as always. I'm Brett. I'm going to be one of the hosts tonight, and like I say every week, we're gonna put out the audio version of tonight's broadcast as a podcast a little bit after this is done. And I also have another podcast called Recovery Survey that comes out every Wednesday morning. They're a little bit shorter, usually about 30-minute episodes. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys would check both of those out. And while you're there, leave us a rating and a review. That really helps us be seen by more people and hopefully get that recovery message out there. So without further ado, I'm going to bring everybody on screen and JR can do the introduction of tonight's guest.
Hey everybody, it's JR. I am happy to announce my good friend JoAnna Vance from West Virginia, a fellow mobilized recovery person and just simply amazing person. I mean, I remember, what was it, about 3-4 years ago, used to send me videos to the page. I'm like, yeah, let me share these. You know, she's got a good message. And look at her now. She's traveling to DC, doing big things. I mean, she is the definition of recovering out loud.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you. In the studio, we were just talking about how we met, and I told him, I was like, well, we actually never got to really meet in person until Mobilized Recovery, but when I think it's been 3 years ago, JR, when I started advocating, a lot and like on social media, Recovery Revolution was one of the very first pages that I ever reached out to. I was like, hey, I'm trying to make this change in my community and I need more people to see what I'm doing so that they can help and be a part of it. And honestly, you were one of the only pages that responded back. And like you said, the rest is history. We've been doing this, I think, 3 years now. It's crazy.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. It is pretty amazing how we bonded back then. I was like, yeah, she's got a great message. I'll share your stuff. And look at you. I remember, what was it, last year, Mobilized Recovery, where we had to do the Zoom meetings. So, we got to talk a little bit then, but that wasn't the same as like when finally this year we got to meet in person. I met so many amazing people at Mobilize.
Yeah, you were one of the first people that I even saw when I got to Vegas. Like, I literally just got to the hotel and I seen you outside. And I was like, oh my God, it's you. We met a lot of great people that, like, I've formed relationships with over social media. And, you don't even realize, like, the kind of bond that you form with someone and like that you've known them forever and then never really met them in person. And like the people that support you that have never even really met you, like it just blows my mind. I love our like recovery family, our Mobilized Recovery family. Like they really helped me through the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, it's so exciting to watch somebody grow into their recovery. I mean,
look at
you've just blossomed. I mean, I'm like, I'm posting, yeah, I'm super proud of her. She started, out there, trying to get her message out there. Now look at you.
I feel like it's just a mess all the time. Like always working on a project, always have something new. So I guess I should be telling people who I am. So I am a person in long-term recovery. And what that means to me is I've not been bound by a life of substance use disorder since March the 13th of 2016. I am an organizer and an advocate for the Recovery Advocacy Project. And I'm actually a recovery fellow for the American Friends Service Committee. So what once started as, me just advocating on my Facebook page about little issues in my hometown that were big issues to me, now is like stuff on CNBC News and NBC, and going to Washington, D.C. and going to Vegas, and, you know, getting to like advocate and organize and work with people from all over the nation on, you know, all of the issues that directly and indirectly affect us. He left. That was a good intro, Jay.
Yeah, I guess I should have looked before I swapped to that view. His JR has left the room.
It's okay.
And he's back. Awesome. Well, would you mind maybe telling us a little bit more about your recovery journey, how you got into recovery, and just kind of letting us know what that looked like, what your life looked like, and maybe how that sparked you to want to become an advocate for people in recovery?
Well, okay, so I grew up in Southern West Virginia, and my hometown is very, very little. There's like one stoplight in the whole entire town, and that's like in front of the courthouse. But so my parents were people who used drugs, and they were in that lifestyle, you know, my whole entire life. So I kind of grew up that way. You know, they were affected by the prescription pain pills that came down from big pharma, and they went to their doctors and they got their medicines, and then it just, you know, bloomed from there. um, I lost my father to a fatal overdose on Thanksgiving Day 17 years ago, actually this coming Thursday. And, you know, I would really like to say that I didn't follow in his path, but generational curses are hard to break. And I spent the next 10 plus years in my own active drug use. And, you know, it was had its ups and downs. I left my small town and went to the big city, you know, ins and outs of the clubs, got to see things that, you know, weren't Southern West Virginia. And let's see. I didn't really, I don't really like to talk about my active use a lot. That's not something, I mean, if you guys have questions, I'll answer them. But like skipping forward to 2016, I found myself in a place to where, you know, I just didn't want to exist anymore. I just wanted to die. You know, I didn't really want to kill myself, but, you know, the next shot or the next drug, I was hoping it would be my last. And I didn't think anything about any of the after effects. And in February of 2016, Chris Stapleton released a song and a video for suicide awareness, and it was called Fire Away. And in the video, there was a woman who was suffering from mental health issues, and she had tried to commit suicide, and her husband had saved her. And then she did actually afterwards commit suicide, and he wasn't there to save her. And it showed, you know, the ambulance coming and picking her up and taking her away. And it said, had the EMT workers that said, 26-year-old female with self-inflicted lacerations to the wrist. You know, it showed her in the hospital dead, with him standing over her body, and then how it impacted him afterwards. And it was just so impactful on my life, because I never thought about what would happen if I was actually to die. And just hearing the words 26-year-old female with self-inflicted lacerations to her wrist, like, I was 26 at that time. And, you know, it just hit home with me. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live this kind of life. I don't know how else to live, but this isn't how I want to live anymore. And I actually self-detoxed at home. I always practice, you know, positive outlets for negative energy. I play the piano and I paint, and I spent a lot of time writing. I'm not one that went to meetings and things like that because, one, that's not really anything that was offered in Southern West Virginia or in my hometown. And for the beginning, I really didn't have a vehicle to go to meetings that were like over an hour away. And then I really didn't trust to go to meetings where other people in recovery or other people who use drugs would be at, because I just didn't trust myself enough. So I basically isolated for almost an entire year. And Google was my best friend, my absolute best friend. Like, I was doing online recovery before it was ever really a thing. I can remember Googling like, what does a drug dream mean? Or what are triggers? Or how to get over triggers, and things like that. And I came across, in my first year of recovery, I came across a page, and it was called Addictions Unscripted. It's actually not there anymore, but it was one of the first social media outlets on Facebook that was truly like, it wasn't like a Facebook group, but what you could do is people would write poems or articles or things like that, and they would submit them, and then the page would post them on the page. So that's actually how I was introduced to Ryan Hampton, because he had an article that was released on that page, and I was like, hey, I like him. I'm going to follow him. And about a year after, I was in recovery for about a year, that's when I was like, well, now I don't want to. Now I'm just, okay, I'm going to tell people, like, hey, I'm in recovery, because, a lot of people knew that I was not a very good person. And I was like, so they need to know that I am different now. And I started on my Facebook dabbling around with some posts and things like that. I started working. And then a year and a half into my recovery, it was almost 2 years. One of my best friends from not only high school, but he's one of my best friends from active drug use. And before people go into the people you use drugs with weren't your friends, like, me and this boy grew up together before drugs. Like, he still supported me after drugs, but he overdosed and died on Christmas Eve when I was in recovery for a year and a half. And that absolutely broke me, because, all of the stuff says, people, places, things, you have to change them, stay away from them. But what about our friends who are dying, And I was sitting, and it just so happens, like, his dad was my softball coach in high school. And I was sitting at my friend's funeral, and all I could think about was a time when, we just went on a bender, and we were sitting in my apartment floor, probably like 2:00 in the morning, and we were talking about recovery. We were talking about what it would look like if we didn't use drugs anymore. Did we even personally know someone that lived the lifestyle that we had lived, and that came out on the other side, that had their family, that had a home, that had a job, that was like successfully living life like, what we had dreamed of? And we didn't know anyone, in Boone County, West Virginia in 2014, 15, at those times, we didn't know a single person that was in recovery. And at my best friend's funeral, that's the only thing that I could think of, was that conversation. And that's when I decided that I'm going to be that person that people know. I mean, at least in Boone County, West Virginia, if they ever have that conversation with themselves or with their friends, like me and my friend had, they were going to know somebody that was in recovery, that had been there and knows and understands. That way they could see that it actually was possible and that they're not alone. And I haven't stopped ever since.
Amazing. I mean, so many of us know people from our past lives that didn't make it, and and I could see how, growing up in a small southern town in West Virginia, that it's not as widespread about recovery, meetings and AA and all of that. But it's like we're fighting a war to get people to admit they're in recovery. I mean, being a face for recovery is something that you should be real proud of. I mean, you're blazing a trail. And I always think of it like what I do. You know, it's. I mean, I may not be there at the end when it finally gets widespread adopted, but at least I know I was in the trenches in the early war, trying to get things right, because people seeing people getting their life back, getting their kids back, getting their driver's license back, finishing their education. That's amazing for someone that's been battled addiction. So it's an amazing thing.
Sometimes I think, like, I've been in recovery now for a little over 5.5 years. Sometimes I think about that life feels like it was lifetimes ago. Like the life that I have today and the life like that I used to lead, I can't even, it blows my mind, you know? Ian said, JoAnna, any temptations? And if so, what strengths keep you on your positive journey? Um, Okay, so I'm not a person. I have friends actually who are like, they say that they wake up every single day and they fight the temptation to use. And that's that's their story. And that's something they're years in recovery, several months in recovery. I've heard different people say different things. I myself personally don't have temptations to use drugs. Like I I mean, okay, so for one, the drug supply is poison now, and we have people who are relapsing all the time and dying the first time that they use. And for two, like, I just couldn't throw away the life that I have, that I've built and that I've gained. But one thing that like people don't really talk about a lot in recovery is their mental health issues. And that actually is something that I struggle with. Not only am I a person in long-term recovery from substance use disorder, but I am also a person that has survived a suicide attempt in that recovery. Did I want to use drugs? No. Did I use drugs? No. Did I want to die? Yes. Did I act out on those ideations? Yes. And I am thankful that I was not successful and that my husband found me. Um, I've spent a lot of time in therapy and in coaching sessions. I started using drugs at a very young age. I was 12 years old. It was at home with my parents because, it was better to do it at home so that they knew how I reacted or what I was doing. And, so I had underlying mental health conditions my whole entire active use that, I was self medicating for. And then when I came into recovery and I started getting all of those feelings and all of those emotions, I didn't know how to deal with them or how to cope. And, it was a lot for me. So, mental health issues, yes. And I really think that that's a big trigger for a lot of people in their relapse is the mental health aspect. One thing, if I would have temptations, or what I tell my friends if they have temptations, that you are not alone and you do not have to be ashamed for having temptations. And you need to have a good support group of friends or family or someone to talk to when you have those temptations. Like, you don't have to keep that to yourself. Like, that kind of stuff is what will eat you up from the inside out. You call and you talk to somebody, or you message somebody, or you text somebody, because you're not alone and you don't have to go through that by yourself.
Good answer. Good answer. I mean, one of the things in treatment that they drilled into us was have at least 5 numbers that you can call anytime, day or night, in case you are, triggered. So, I mean, to me, it's all about the community. I mean, you grow your community, grow your friends, and you got people pulling for you, and they know what you've been through, and they know your past. I mean, if you're completely honest with people, I mean, I think one of the fears in coming out of addiction is that we're afraid how people are going to react when we tell them, "Yeah, I used to be an addict," or I'm in early recovery." Da da da. I mean, but from my experience, I mean, I'm completely wide open with my recovery. I mean, my work knows everything. I mean, hell, you can read my book and and find out about my past. But so I'm completely wide open, and it's worked for me. I mean, everyone respects my journey. I have friends, I have coworkers that still go out there and they drink, and it's fine. I mean, but they just know that I don't bring it around me because but it doesn't trigger me though. Like you said, I haven't really felt triggered in years since my early recovery.
I find that's a hit and miss conversation with people about how they feel triggered or if they want to use or, and I'm like you, like in all of my work, like the job that I have today, like I'm actually a paid organizer. And what started out with like recovery and substance use disorder organizing has moved to, poor people issues, working people issues, unions, marginalized communities. And what I find in that is like, regardless of what I'm organizing or what space that I enter into, there's somebody in that space that has been affected directly or indirectly by substance use disorder. They know someone, or they've lost someone, or they are someone. And so it's just like all encompassing everything that I do. There's still that. And like you said, that's how I got my job. I mean, I have been very loud about my recovery and about my beliefs and, accept multiple pathways. People can change. Parents can get their kids back. Just because you're a formerly incarcerated person doesn't mean that you can't have a successful life. Those are all beliefs that a lot of people in West Virginia don't really side with. So one thing that I always find crazy is like when it's not someone that really knows me yet, and then they're introduced to me and then they later find out that I'm a person in recovery, they're like, "Oh my God, I can't imagine that you were ever a person like that." And I'm like, okay, so what does a person like that look like?
Yeah, exactly.
Something for me that I can, was my detox experience. Don't want to ever go through that mental state of ever again. Oh gosh, that was one thing, the detox experience. Like, that's been so long ago. I think I've like mentally blocked it out. I mean, I spent a lot of time in the bed, binge watching Netflix and sleeping and in the bathroom.
Marshall Mercer in the crowd. What's up?
Marshall in the house. Marshall's one of our fellow mobilized recovery people.
Yeah, me and him going to get down on some spades next mobilize.
Yes, I'm in. I am in. And some hearts too. We should have a tournament.
Yeah.
They
We'll be
do
playing
all
for
kinds of
canteen.
stuff. They do all kinds of cool stuff up there in Maine, man.
I got to get Brett and Jeff Vickers up on their spades games.
Right. No stacking partners, guys.
We're the Recovery Revolution team.
Yes. Mobile Up 2024.
I have a question for you. So as you were telling your story, it kind of sounded a lot like, and I know a lot of people have seen it recently, and I'm grateful that it's out. The Dope Sick special that's on Netflix. It sounds like your town could have been one of the towns from that. Have you seen that? And what are your thoughts on that? Because I for me personally, I think that it's fantastic that that's become that is in the mainstream and that we're talking about, the opioid epidemic and how it's affected so many people, and how a lot of people have gotten into drug use, just not intentionally. They get injured and get prescribed to killers, and then all of a sudden, they're looking for something more. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I have watched Dope Sick. I'm thankful that I watched it weekly. And I got to have like that week break in between each of the episodes because it was hard to watch. I grew up in a coal town. I know all kinds of coal miners that got hurt in the mines and that were overprescribed opiates. My cousin was actually one of them, and he overdosed and died this past July with Narcan sitting on the table beside of him. Like what started what started so many years ago, it hasn't stopped. It hasn't stopped. What happened was their doctors got in trouble while the Sacklers got away with everything, and they cut off all of their pills instantly. So that's when all of the dealers brought heroin into the towns and nobody knew what it was. And I'm just the friends and the family members I have lost. I mean, it really was like reliving my life already watching that. And then like just to hear Richard Sackler on there say, we've already taken care of West Virginia. Yeah, we know. And just really, really angry. And going to DC for anybody that's watching, Washington, DC on December the 3rd for a rally in front of the Department of Justice to plead with the Department of Justice to bring criminal charges against the Sackler family for beginning and fueling the opioid epidemic. And so that's from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on December the 3rd in Washington, D.C. in front of the Department of Justice. And I hope that everyone can make it.
How many people are y'all expecting to be out there?
I'll name drop some people. T. Scott's gonna be there. I'm not sure if Kay Ellis is yet. Possibly Carly Summers. Yeah, Maine's coming. New Maine would come. Possibly Carly Summers. Yes, Carly Summers for Congress, Maryland. Whoop whoop. I think Randy Anderson, Johnny Fab, and the Pennsylvania crew. I'm bringing 2 carloads from West Virginia. I think Heather and Tanya from from New Jersey are coming. I've been rounding up the East Coast for the past 2 weeks. Like, we going, guys. We all went to Vegas. We can all meet in DC. So, any thoughts on medication management? Suboxone, Subutex versus 100% abstinence. I am not a recovery pathway versus a recovery pathway type person. I do know, and I believe that the percent is 75% of people who are offered medication assistance are 75% less likely to overdose in their first year compared to the percent of abstinence-based people, which I think, and don't quote me, I'd have to look, is like less than 15%. And I don't believe that people have to taper down from their medication. I think that if a person is in recovery and they are on medication, they are on any kind of maintenance or abstinence or anything that's making their life better, anything that's helping them to grow and to be a better version of themselves, I don't knock anybody's pathway. And that includes harm reduction, because harm reduction is a recovery pathway, be it a person is going from using IV drugs to smoking, to snorting, to slowing down. All of those are all pathways to recovery. And I think a lot of people seem to forget that, like, abstinence is not equal to recovery. Like, abstinence There's a lot of people that I know in abstinence-based recovery that have terrible hearts and do terrible things. And while they may not use drugs anymore, their lifestyle does not reflect a person in recovery's lifestyle. Hope I don't make anybody mad.
Great answer. Great answer. I agree. Anything that improves somebody's life, I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, if smoking weed keeps you off the hard drugs, hey, smoke, blaze them up.
So when the pharmacy tells the addict that their steps are in backward, then what? Go to a different pharmacy.
So can you take us through a day in the life of JoAnna Vance?
Oh my God. A good day or a bad day?
I mean, I've seen your Facebook post, and I'm like, man, she's all over the map.
Okay, so it can be like a day in the life of working from home, or it could be a day in the life of not working from home. Usually you get up between 5:30 and 6 o'clock in the morning. I have 3 kids, so have to get them ready for school. They get on the school bus at 7:20. So between 7 and 8, that's the time that if I'm leaving and have to go to Charleston, that's the time like I'm getting ready, drinking coffee, running out the door, because it takes me an hour to get to Charleston. If it's a day that I get to work from home, I'm not getting ready. I'm drinking coffee and scrolling, well, checking emails and probably scrolling on TikTok until 8 o'clock. And then once it's 8 o'clock, like I'll have Zoom meetings, phone calls, emails. Oh, Lord have mercy. Sometimes I get messages from House of Delegates representatives. I get messages from, like our ACLU and our budget and policy people. Our legislation is coming up. So we're talking about, numbers and percentages of what we're going to, like, what legislatures we're going to find and who's going to be. It's a lot of Zoom on days that I work from home. But actually in the back of the studio, I was talking about, he asked if I had headphones, and I was like, yeah, but they're probably, not charged, because anymore when I have Zoom meetings at home, like I'll either, like, if I'm doing something around the house, like I'll set my laptop on my table and then I'll turn my camera off and I'll like wash dishes or do some laundry or whatever. And then when they talk to me, I'll like run over and press the unmute button so that I can respond. And then, my husband works night shift, so he's usually waking up anywhere between like 12 and 2, something like that. So like it's juggling with him when I'm home, because he's always like, let's go out and do lunch or whatever. I'm like, just because I'm working from home, honey, I'm still working. He's like, you're always on your phone. I get paid to do that. And then my kids get home at 3:20. And so then it's like homework, dinner, baths, getting ready, like hanging out with them. Sometimes like I have late meetings, but like my first thing anytime I ever have a late meeting is like, if you hear my kids in the background screaming, I promise they're still alive. Now a day that I'm not working from home, oh yeah, and that's like getting the kids into bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then me finishing up emails or letters or whatever I have to before I go to sleep, and then doing it all over again the very next day. But a day not from home, like I drive an hour to Charleston and we'll have back-to-back like coffee meetings, breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, do this conference call or meeting with this representative or this senator. We've really been working a lot with Senator Manchin for the Build Back Better agenda, and that's surrounding like the child tax credit and paid leave. That's actually what I went to Washington for. And then those meetings, those are all back-to-back, packed full. Also, and then usually on my way to Charleston or on my way home from Charleston, I'm like, I don't really listen to music too much. I have a lot going on inside my head. So if anything, I'll listen to like a podcast or something. And then it's the same unless it's baseball season, and then baseball season is rough because I get home from work and the kids get home from school, and then we're at the ball fields from 4:30 until 9:30 at night.
Wow.
My life is nonstop crazy.
If people are interested, go ahead, JR.
I said that's a pretty full day.
Yeah, I was just going to ask JoAnna if people are interested in being a part of it or finding out more information, what are some ways, or do you guys have a website, or how can we find out more information?
For the Build Back Better agenda, or for Mobilize Recovery, or the Recovery Advocacy Project?
Recovery Advocacy Project.
I think it's called recoveryvoices.com. Hang on, let me look.
Voices Project.
Hang on. It's recoveryvoices.com. www.recoveryvoices.com, and that will take you straight to our National Recovery Advocacy Project page. And from that page, you can actually sign up and get connected with people that are in your area working. So like we're kind of set up by like a state by state basis. So like I'm West Virginia, like we have South Carolina, North Carolina, we have Washington, D.C., there's Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Florida, all kinds of people. I think we have like, I could be wrong, but there's like at least 36 states, I think, out of the 51. Yes, there is a Florida team. Tim Perry is probably not on here. I love Tim Perry. He's in the Florida team. Oh, and who else? There's Angelo and Thomas. Florida's got a really good team. And it'll connect you with your team that is in your area. And it's not even just like what they're working on, it's really like a group collaborative thing. Like each of our state teams are networked for like, what can we do? What does the community need us to do? What can we do for our community? It's not about like what JoAnna Vance wants to do in West Virginia, or like, what Angelo in Florida wants to do in Florida. We do listening sessions to where like people from the community come and they tell us like, this is what I'm seeing. This is what's going on. These are the barriers I'm facing. This is what could help me. And then that's how we develop, like that's how each of the states develop like what they're going to do next and where they're going to go from there to help their states and their communities. So yeah, if you guys are interested, you can go on over to recoveryvoices.com, and it will find like it'll connect you. It'll tell you exactly what we are and what we do, who we are and what we do, and then connect you to people that are local with you.
Then you can sign up for Vegas.
Yeah. Vegas was nuts. Like, you think my life sounds crazy, like on an everyday basis? Vegas was absolutely insane. On the day that we did the public narrative coaching, I literally got up at 4:30 that morning and got ready. Had to be there, like all the coaches had to be there and ready, I think at 6:30. And that was like for our morning, check-ins and all of the stuff of getting ready. And then you know how long that public narrative training, it was all day long, and the breaks were very short, very short.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And then we had
killing us on those breaks.
We had debriefing after that. And then I think I went out with Daniel and Leanne. Good gosh, there was we all went out to eat at that one restaurant. And that was at like, our reservations weren't until like 9 o'clock. So by the time I drove back to my cousin's house, because I didn't stay at the hotel. Like, I don't know, it was like 11 o'clock and I was so tired, so tired. Do not suggest. I told them next year we have to have longer breaks or break that down into 2 days because that's too much.
Yeah, Rosie was amazing though. I mean, she's intimidating, but she's amazing.
I love Rosie. I love Rosie so much. What did you think? Did you enjoy the public narrative training? You had done it the previous year, right?
Yeah, I did it the previous year when she did all the drawings. Yeah, it was really good. I mean, it really helped me develop my own story, which is, in constant
Yes.
development, but it really helped.
And that's something that I've come to realize. Listen's probably coming over here. I heard his door. That's something that I've come to realize also is that, like, your story is always, no, Logan, beat it. Sorry, that's my son. Your story is always changing and developing. Like, your story doesn't always stay the same. Like, certain moments in your life are going to impact you different around a certain thing, whatever it is that you're working on. Like, if I'm talking about, if I'm talking about fatal overdose, I might talk about my dad, right? But if I'm talking about, poor people issues, I'm going to talk about what it was like with my parents growing up. Or, like, if I'm talking about, there's so many different things. Like, we tell our stories in moments of our lives that have impacted us, that made us decide that the world needed changed, or that there was something wrong with the world. And, depending on, like, your target audience or who is listening or who you're speaking to, like, those impactful moments can be different times.
Exactly.
Implement the 12-step and principles.
I didn't understand his question.
I think he's wanting to know, or do you go where the addict is? I'm not sure. Implement those 12 steps and principles. It's not a 12-step the Recovery Advocacy Project is not a 12-step based organization. It's just a recovery community organization. And that's just not people in recovery from substance use disorder. That's also family members, that have been impacted and lost people to fatal overdose. And, we consider those people are people in recovery also because, they're recovering from the loss of their loved ones. So, like, there are a lot of people in the Recovery Advocacy Project that implement the 12 steps and the principles, but we really follow a path of, like, multiple pathways to recovery. Dual diagnosis. We talk a lot about mental health. It's, as like a national group, we talk about all of the areas, all encompassing, like recovery-friendly workplaces, recovery community organizations, how to talk to your legislatures, the different pathways of recovery, how to break and reduce stigma, talking about marginalized communities, how to grow relationships and help your LGBTQIA plus family or friends. And dual diagnosis, like, that's something that a lot of us are really trying to deep dive into, because, that's even in West Virginia right now. I'm actually working on a piece of legislation that is specifically for dual diagnosis with the national mental health parity.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. It depends on who you're talking to, because if I'm talking to a military vet, I'll talk about things that they identify with. But if I'm talking to someone else, my story will, be more directed towards what they experienced. It's like, we're constantly peeling that onion, so we don't know where it's going to take us.
I had actually developed a whole different story to share, because I was a public narrative coach at Mobilize, and I had developed a whole new story to share because, a lot of, like, my main friends, they've heard my story, right? My 2-minute, this is me and this is why I do what I do. But, like, it came down to, I was sitting at my table and I didn't know a single person at my table, and they didn't know me either. So I, stuck with my same story. And I had thought about it a lot, like before mobilized. I was like, I don't want to tell the same story. But it just came down to those people didn't know me. So I just told my story, you know, for them to get to know me, for them to be comfortable, to have a safe space, to feel like they can share their story too. Because that's a lot of trauma. Like those public narrative trainings, man, there's a lot of trauma stuff. The first time I took that training in 2019, and they were like, think of a time before you were 17. I was like, oh, y'all want deep trauma. I hadn't thought of a time before I was 17 for 17 years.
Yeah, Brett, can you imagine sitting at a table with like five other people, and the coach at your table is telling you, okay, you have 3 minutes to write a story, and then you're going to share it with the group, and we're going to, quiz you or ask you questions about it. Ready, go.
Quiz
Yeah.
you.
I'm not a writer, so
You literally
that'd be
got
terrifying.
5 minutes. It
That's
was
terrifying.
it was a training with Rosie, like with the whole entire group. And then there was like 6 people at each table, right? So when you broke out into your small groups, the coach was like, all right, you have 5 minutes to write your 2-minute story. And then you have to share it in front of all these people at this table. And then I'm going to ask you more. I'm going to coach you to dig deeper into your story that you're about to share.
Yeah, it was scary stuff.
We had a care team that was there on the side for people that, that were, brought up some underlying traumas that they hadn't thought of, or that needed to take a break and go to talk to somebody, or like that was something we were like, no, we have to have that. This is very traumatic. We have to have a group of people there to help someone if they need it. And there were a couple people that did. So we were glad that we did that.
Yeah, I was at the table with Randy Anderson and Kyle.
I love Randy. He's going to be in DC with his megaphone. I'm pumped.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Great idea with the care team. So, is there anything else you guys was wondering?
I think you've answered all my questions.
That appears. Yeah, I think Ian. Well, I don't know if that's a question, but commenting on that, I would say, yeah. It makes you vulnerable. I mean, if I'm vulnerable, then you're going to be drawn in a little bit more to my story. Then, like Rosie says, hit him with the ask.
Yes. What were you asking for? Yeah. What is your ask?
I'm just asking to get out of this.
Oh, I just wanted you to know I really appreciate you, and thank you for like the 3 years ago answering my Facebook message and sharing my stuff, because I even showed my husband when you did it. I was like, look, somebody shared it.
You have a beautiful family.
They're crazy. Absolutely nuts. Like my kids helped me put Narcan kits together and stuff. And my youngest is 6 and he's in kindergarten. And he was telling his teacher, right, that I was going to Vegas. And his teacher was like, what does your mom do again for work? And my 6-year-old's like, she works in recovery and she gives out Narcan, and Narcan saves lives. And I'm like, you know what? If a 6-year-old can understand that, then what is wrong with everybody else?
Exactly.
But I've been very open with my kids. When we were actively using, it was, we were sick because we were. And now that we're in recovery, we are not sick anymore. And that's I don't use the language clean, like I've got this much clean time. I think that's more of a 12-step thing, but I don't like to use the word clean because the stigmatizing language surrounding it, like in the rooms or in like places that, you know, you're familiar with the people, yes. But also, you know, I was not dirty, I was sick, and dirty is not equivalent to sick. So just like clean is not equivalent to recovery, because recovery does not equal dirty. Like, or I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I get in all kinds of fights on TikTok about that. You're like, you use this. Like, stop using it. I'm gonna make a TikTok go up. Like, imagine me walking up to Senator Manchin, just being like, "Hi, my name's JoAnna. I'm an addict." He would look at me like, "Who let you in the Capitol?"
Yep.
That's why we try to use destigmatizing person first language. Because, you know, not everybody identifies as an addict. Not everybody who uses drugs becomes addicted to them. And that's something really big I try to push on to everybody. Like, person first, destigmatizing language.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it looks like we got a question. I'm going to assume that's Jeff because it's through the Recovery Revolution page. He said, "What is your ultimate goal with your service work?"
Oh, God. I mean, my ultimate goal is, you know, to curb the opioid epidemic. And to do that, we're going to have access to Narcan, mass access to Narcan. We're going to have, you know, we're going to have to expand harm reduction. You know, we're going to have jobs. You know, if people come out of substance use disorder and into recovery and they don't have access to a job or to safe housing, you know, that's just like the recidivism rate in the jails. You know, that's just basically continuing the same circle. So I know it's a really big goal, but yeah, my goal is to curb the opioid epidemic and to see people, not just people, to see my kids and the next generation of people not have to live through the epidemic that we've had to live through.
I know it's staggering. They said 100,000 plus in the last 12 months.
Yeah, it's absolute. I mean, and you know what? Until substance use disorder and recovery becomes a public health issue instead of a political issue, and until the politicians start listening to doctors and health experts and real people with real lived experience, those numbers aren't going to go down.
I know that's one of the things I love about the Recovery Advocacy Project. I mean, if the recovery, there's so many people in active recovery. If we could get everybody organized and start using our power as one voice, I mean, these politicians would definitely pay attention. I mean, until then, I mean, we're kind of jammed up. You know, I hate to say it, but
I mean, I think that that's ultimately what we're working towards right now is, you know, teaching people how to talk to their legislators. Like, that's the reason, teaching people how to share their story for purpose, like changing the narrative. And, you know, there's a whole lot of us. And, you know, there's going to be a whole lot more of us. It's just, it starts with people like us recovering out loud.
exactly. Well, I do appreciate you spending tonight with us. I mean, I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I love what you're doing in West Virginia. You know, I love seeing your posts on Facebook. You were just on what, CNN?
CNBC.
Oh, CNBC? Okay.
I think it was CNBC, and I think NBC News actually did an article NBC News did an article and it had a picture of me and my kids in front of the Capitol. And then Business Insider did an article and had a picture of me speaking in front of the Capitol. That's super cool. I wonder if I can get that blue check mark beside of my name because I'm good big news outlets. Probably not. Be like, you don't have enough followers. That's okay. One day.
One day.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate you so much and have always followed Recovery Revolution for probably one of the very first Facebook groups or pages that I ever really followed. And thank you for all that you do.
We try. Our mission is to promote recovery. I mean, if someone has a good message, then yeah, and if I think it can help someone, and my team is they know we promote recovery. It doesn't matter how you get sober, as long as you stay sober. And if you have a positive message, then hit one of us up, and we'll share it. We'll share the message.
You definitely do. I'm proof of that.
Exactly. I feel like digging through our old videos and see if I can pull one of the early ones out.
The very first one has a big West Virginia and the picture of all three of my kids. And it's just like this long post trashing Boone County Commission for not letting that recovery group, the recovery group that wasn't even mine, right, use their community center for free.
Wow. Have they changed in your town since all of this?
I don't live there. I grew up in Boone County, but throwback videos of Recovery Revolution. I don't live in Boone County. I do know that they have expanded access to a lot of things since that post. And I have helped open some things and get some things started. But I do know here in here in Beckley, where I live, like there is more than a couple buildings that, people are allowed to use for rent free or like free of charge for meetings, recovery meetings, all recovery meetings, like support groups and things like that. So I think that things, looking back to thinking of that post from 3 years ago to now, like I can definitely see where things have changed.
Yeah, it seems like there's so many people recovering out loud now. I remember in the beginning it was like just a few pages, and I was like, yeah, let's do something. Let's mix it up a little bit. Let's think outside the box. Brett, think outside the box, buddy.
That's right. Always.
I got to comment on your red beard, man.
always commenting on it. Awesome. Well, if nobody else has any other questions, I guess we can wrap it up. I don't see anything in the comments section. Ian says to mix it up, brother. That's right. We're going to mix it up. Well, JoAnna, I really do appreciate you coming on tonight and talking with us about recovery advocacy and telling us a little bit about your story. It's absolutely incredible, the work you're doing. And after we get done with this live, I'm definitely gonna hop on the website recoveryvoices.com and check out how we can get involved, help out some more. And as always, guys, this episode will be available as a podcast shortly after we're done here on the live. And I have another show called Recovery Survey every Wednesday, little short 30-minute episodes. And be sure to tune into Jeff Vickers' new show here on the Recovery Revolution page. It's going to be Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern?
Yes.
I'm terrible with time zones. JoAnna knows. We were texting back and forth and she was like, what time is it? And I was like, oh, well, I'm Central Time. Hold on, I had to Google convert the time zone because I'm terrible with time zones, but that's beside the point. As always, guys, remember, it's progress, not perfection.
Booyah.